Voice of excellence. Chris, I was saying that I've forgotten to use a PC after getting into iPad these days. So bear with me. Um, I know that Chris Gopalakrishnan doesn't require any introduction whatsoever. However, just in case any of you really don't know him, I know him as greatest well-wishers of IITians and IIT Madras. He is truly a role model for all IIT Madras alumnus and IITians in general. He is a philanthropist. He is passionate about India, and he is very passionate about science and technology growth, not only from where we are today, but what India was, the research that he is trying to do. He is a great supporter of entrepreneurs in his current role as chairman of Axilor. And we don't need to talk a whole lot. I'm sure if you haven't read about him, you must. There is enough on YouTube and Google and videos. And very frankly, although I've known him for over 10 years, sat with him in IIT Alumni Trust, I learned so much about him and not so much about his family, Sudha and others yet. He has managed to maintain a very humble public image. Chris, with great humility and honor, I welcome you to this session of excellence. I hope all of you can hear me very well. We all think that success is a journey. Success is not a destination. And Chris, there is no one that I know whom I have interacted who has achieved the pinnacle of success in terms of what can be achieved in a short span. But could you talk to us a little bit about the journey? Many a times the journey is what makes it fun. The destination, when you reach, it's okay. It's another day. It doesn't make a great lot of impact, at least for the little success that I've had. I'm sure some of the trials and tribulations, some of the roadblocks that you hit upon, and the breakdowns and the breakthroughs that you must have seen. I'm sure all of us in this room, we have over 70 plus people here, totally, including the audience here. So we would all love to hear your journey and how was it and what all can we learn from it.
So, Raju, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I hope you can hear me properly.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
You rightly put it, success is a journey. To me, you create milestones, you create, goals which you want to achieve 3 years from now, 5 years from now. Closer you get to that, you recalibrate and you go forward, right? There is no end to this journey. The end is probably when you die, right? Till that time, as a human being, all of us will have goals. All of us will have, places where we want to go, things that we want to do, and that's what life is all about, in my opinion. And that's what I've been doing. I don't think I would be unique. I see life as not a straight line, but with twists and turns. And at every turn, I've been fortunate that I've taken the right turn. I've been fortunate that I've got fantastic people helping me and supporting me. And at every turn, I believe luck has been an important factor, because many a time you don't have perfect information to make a decision and go forward. So luck has also played an important role. My favorite example here is IIT Madras itself, right? I came to IIT Madras to study MSc Physics. I did BSc Physics because I had no choice but to take BSc Physics. I wanted to go for MBBS, didn't get admission, so took BSc Physics, was kind of lost, and then came to IIT Madras because in those days for MSc, there was no interview. If there was an interview, I probably would not have made it because my English was so poor, right? And while studying MSc Physics, I got introduced to computers it was an accident, really. A casual conversation with, at that point, I did not know Professor Mahabala on the road. And he said, there's a Fortran class in the campus, and if you go and take the Fortran class, you will get access to the computer center, right? And luckily, I took and got fascinated by computers, computer science, and ours was the first batch where they admitted MSc Physics and MSc Chemistry people to a MTech in software engineering. Previously only BTech people, and I think because it was a software course, MSc Mathematics people were admitted. Ours was the first batch where they admitted MSc Physics and MSc Chemistry people into MTech Computer Science. So I always joke when I talk to engineers that I got into engineering through the back door, right? I didn't do a BTech in engineering, but I ended up with an MTech in computer science. I chose to join Padni Computers because I felt, small organization. So again, the right decision, because that's where I met Narayan Murthy, Nandan, other founders. We started Infosys, and then the rest is, as they say, history. So if I look at my journey, it's in some sense being at the right place at the right time with the right people supporting me, and luck. Of course, you have to work hard. You have to work very, sincerely, diligently. If you want to achieve anything today, it's a 7/24 endeavor. There is no shortcut. Yes, it's possible that accidentally you may achieve something, but most people achieve things because they're working very hard, they're working very smartly, and they're at the right place at the right time. That's what I believe strongly.
Well, Chris, as usual, extremely modest, and being at the right place at the right time. I'm sure there is enough that you have done, and I'm
So
sure
Raju,
that
sorry to interrupt you. Let me very quickly illustrate that, right? I took MTech Computer Science when PCs were introduced and computer science became really, really big, right? At the right place at the right time. We started Infosys again, 1981. Of course, we can say that, we had, some kind of a premonition about this, but really, if I look back, it was to do something from India, create an organization that we would be proud of, leverage the talent in India to support companies around the world. That was a simple, model that we created, and that became the global delivery model and became very successful. So,
No, you
that's why I
must
feel
have
that
you must have reinvented yourself every 5 years. You said recalibrating your goals. I think
very much so.
that must have been the real heart of how you could keep on building on your vision as you saw the opportunities, right? For young
Clearly.
entrepreneurs, the startups can be small, but if you are wide open, you are receiving, you are listening to your customers, you're seeing the opportunities, you create the pathway to success. I think that's what I see as the greatest thing you have done in Infosys. And today, yeah, it is a legacy that you have left behind, right?
Yeah.
No,
So,
no.
as an individual, as an organization, you have to recalibrate, reinvent, take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you, and go forward, and multiple dimensions. So when we all studied and passed out, the model for computing was mainframe, the language was COBOL, right? The operating system was CICS, right? And then it went to MS-DOS, went to Windows, went to Internet, went to mobile technology. The model of software development went from waterfall to agile. We had to adopt to quality systems like CMM, um, you know, uh, capability maturity model from Software Engineering Institute. I had to go from a techie to becoming a business manager and a business leader. Learn, no MBA degree, right? So learn business by doing it. Uh, you know, several, and and you have to decide based on the data that you have. You choose the people around you whom you can trust and whom you can depend on. Listen to people and take the best decision that you can under the circumstances. But you are continuously learning. Even today, I read at least 1 hour a day. Every day, I make it a point to read. When I stepped down from Infosys, I decided, that's 2014, I'm not going to work in the area of information technology because that would be competing with Infosys. So I chose, health care as an area to focus on. And I've been, again, learning a new area in the last 7 years, which is all around healthcare and how healthcare industry is getting transformed, what the technologies that are driving the changes, what are the new business models that are relevant, possible, and how India can uniquely contribute. See, one thread, from Infosys days to today is about, and you touched upon this, is the belief that India can uniquely contribute to the world. I firmly believe this, and even today, I know that's what I talk to people about. That's what I'm passionate about. Even when wealth is being created, I now passionately advocate that we must invest in the startup ecosystem. We must benefit from the success of these startups. That wealth must be in India, not go to somebody outside the country. These IPOs, for example, who is making money? The people who are making money are these funds from outside today. And our retail investors are then, holding to these companies now, of course, but a lot of the shares are owned by uh, overseas funds. I have nothing against them, but then the wealth is not being made here.
Chris, I'm going to switch completely from the business journey to your personal journey, if it is okay. There is an old saying, ஐந்தில் வழங்காதது ஐம்பதில் வழங்குமா. In Tamil, it means what you don't learn or comprehend at the age of 5, can you learn and comprehend at the age of 50? So the whole thinking is, right or wrong, what you are at the age of 5 manifest itself into qualities which makes you successful. So can you talk about your childhood days a little bit? What qualities that you had? And you did say that I wanted to be a doctor, and you have some regrets, or possibly no regrets that you didn't become one. You may do a lot more in healthcare now without being a doctorate degree in your hand. But the point is, even some of us have grandchildren now. What do we give them as a quality that, if there is any, that I'm sure there is, Chris, age of 5 to 10 must have been a very critical formative age. So can you talk a little bit and touch upon it?
Sure. So born and brought up in Trivandrum. So till my BSc days, that's where I studied. And luckily, for me, middle class or lower middle class family, you know, the government school there was really, really good. Government model school. At SSLC, you know, that's the 10th grade. Out of the 10 ranks in the state, 5 would come to government model school where I studied, and 5 would go to a private convent school. And we were the competitors, you know. So 5 girls and 5 boys typically would get the ranks and things like that. So I was lucky. You know, I still remember the annual fees that I paid in those days was 12 rupees.
Wow.
Right, in school. 12 rupees, that's it. You know, today I, you know, feel you know, we again, you know, we were lucky. That was a different time, different era. You know, you can study in government schools and do very well. All through, of course, I've studied in government institutions, you know, University College, IIT Madras, etc. Second part of that is in Trivandrum, we had the British Council Library. We had a public library, very, very large public library where, you know, you can get membership. You had the American, I think it was called USIS, you know, United States Information Services or something like that. They had a nice center where they used to have, you know, these lunar landing live being shown and things like that. Then there was the Soviet Union had a center where, you know, they used to publish their books very cheap actually, but there used to be a lot of science books which was accessible to us. So 4, you know, major centers where you had access to books and things like that. And I used to practically live in the British Council Library and the public library. I had a lot of access to books, etc. There was a science society in Trivandrum. So, you know, again, lucky to be in a place where I developed interest in science, you know, developed interest in learning by myself. You know, I think I would really, really, you know, if I say one thing that you must inculcate in your children is to learn, and the curiosity to learn, right? That if you can inculcate, that's something that they will carry to their entire life and will benefit from that all through. You know, make them learn something by themselves. You know, try to figure things out by themselves. My parents, you know, because my father passed 10th, that's it. But he had a very clear vision that his children must not suffer because of that. He had to, you know, go and take a job at the age of 18 because, you know, that was what was required. You know, he didn't have money to go for further studies and things. He had to earn and take care of his family and things like that. But he was very clear that he will not deny us a good education, and he supported us. And it was affordable. You know, that was the biggest thing. And he made sure that we got the best education possible. My brother, younger brother, so we are 2 of us. He passed engineering in Trivandrum Engineering College and went on to do very well. He's now retired from Oracle. He lives in US. So both of us, I believe, did extremely well, and that's what I would say parents, I think Indian parents, that's what they do, right? They make sure that their children get the best education and can take care of themselves, can earn a living. That's what they did. And I was, you know, lucky in that sense. So what did I carry from that? A love for science, curiosity, access to lots and lots of books, and a good network of friends. We are still friends from that time onwards. You know, 50 years we have been friends, etc. So that's what I can remember from those days.
Thank you. Again, switching gears to Industrial Revolution 3.0, we are all kind of a product of that. And I know you have talked about 4.0 in some of your videos. How can India benefit? How can we all collectively prepare ourselves for this future that is just started, that has just started, and there is going to be a huge thing? So what do you see, and how do we prepare ourselves for the next wave of opportunities?
See, if I look back into the third industrial revolution, and this is something that fascinated me, and I spent some time and money documenting the rise of Indian IT services industry through the voices and through the conversations with the people who made it happen. I'm talking about Itihasa. This is where we have recorded conversations by people like F.C. Kohli, Ramadurai, Narayan Murthy, Nandan Nilekani, Asim Premji, about 50 odd people, including Chandra, the Tata Sons chairman now. All of these people have shared their thoughts. So when I look at that, one, we got at the basement level itself. We got in at the basement level itself. MTech Computer Science was started at IIT Kanpur, if I remember right, in the 60s. We had access to the best computers in those days very early on. IIT Madras got its IBM 370 in 1973. And at that point, it was the second largest mainframe computer in the whole of Asia. Right. So in the third industrial revolution, we got access to the technology on par with anybody else in the world. Second, we got trained. IIT Kanpur got professors from the US. They then transferred the knowledge to people like Professor Mahabala, Professor Muthukrishnan, Professor Rajaraman. These are the people who then went on to go to IIT. So they were at Kanpur. They went to so Professor Muthukrishnan and Mahabala came to IIT Madras, set up the computer science department, and again started these programs and courses, etc. So we got trained very early on. Third, IBM left India. That created a vacuum, and lots of startups happened. That's probably the first wave of startups that happened in India around the late 70s, etc. So Infosys was founded in 1981. So when what is really interesting about this industry is that though we were competitors, we worked together to create the industry. The industry body NASSCOM worked very hard to create a movement in India around quality, a movement in India around branding India, shared knowledges, best practices, worked with the government single-mindedly, not about helping one company or another, but helping the entire industry. And the government also supported with the policy around software technology parks, the policy around tax breaks for the industry, etc. So everybody played their part in creating this industry, and we took full advantage of opportunities presented like the Y2K or the internet bubble and things like that, and the industry scaled up very, very rapidly. And all the companies, TCS, Wipro, Infosys, HCL, world class today, they are some of the largest companies in the world, in terms of size, scale, quality, market cap, profitability, etc. So when I now look at the fourth industrial revolution, we have to identify, and we were focused in what we were good at, the strength we had. We had low capital. So we couldn't have gone into creating a hardware industry. We couldn't have gone into creating a huge investment into sales and marketing and a product industry or product business, right? So we took advantage of the opportunity presented in the market, which a lot of software had to be written, right? And the strength was the talent that's available in India. And we created this industry with very single-minded focus. So if you look at fourth industrial revolution, there is opportunity on the technology side, and there is opportunity now to disrupt every other industry. That's what is, very nice about the fourth industrial revolution. Of course, in the third industrial revolution, also banking got disrupted or everything, but the intensity was not as much as you would find in the fourth industrial revolution. Today, we can say that every industry is a technology industry now, because the what drives that industry will be IT. So if you look at a car, for example, it will have probably 150 processors. It'll have more lines of code than a mainframe computer from the 70s or 80s, right? So every business is going to change. So you can actually take a industry vertical and leverage the changes and the opportunities that are happening. You can also look at technologies like IoT or cloud, etc. Try to do that, but that requires a different set of capabilities. It's not a question of skills, because those products are actually being developed in India because their R&D center is here in India. So it's not a question of skills. It's a question of other strengths that you require in terms of resources, money, the academic research ecosystem that is necessary to do some of the work. So we have to leverage our strengths. I will give you a simple example. The way we have developed a fintech ecosystem in India, which is public infrastructure and private innovation, right? And that has created one of the best, I believe, one of the best fintech industry structure in India, where we are able to serve 1.4 billion people, give them access to bank accounts, give them ability to transfer money, create products, vast amount of innovation, huge amount of startup activity, and tremendous amount of wealth and things like that. And so we've actually addressed all the stakeholders when you look at each industry. That's possible for the world. We can create new businesses for the world. We can leverage the opportunity that is provided by fourth industrial revolution to disrupt industry by industry and look at the global market to provide this solution. Last point I'll make here is, see, when a developed country develops a product, creates a product, they create that for the top 10% of the world. They create it for the developed markets. When India develops a product, it's affordable for 100% of the world, 7 billion people. Now that's what is the strength? That is the strength of India. That's what we need to focus on and leverage. Just look at the vaccine. If India was not manufacturing the vaccine, we could not have vaccinated 1 billion people in a short period of 1 year, right? A poor country like India could not have afforded the vaccines, but we manufactured and vaccinated 1 billion people in a short period of 1 year. And that's what is the strength of India, the ability to create world-class products, the ability to leverage technology and science at an affordable price, an inclusive model, and do it at scale. This is what India is all about, and that's what we need to leverage in the fourth industrial revolution. And there are so many opportunities to do this.
Thanks, Chris. That was very enlightening. Sorry, Chris, the battery apparently in this PC is running out, so we are trying to create a backup. 1 minute, I will send it to you. Yeah, Zoom app is there. So 1 second. Let me see. Can you walk there? Sorry, Chris and others, we are stuck. Is there no anybody has a charger by any chance? No. Different. 1 minute, just we will
Okay, okay.
wait a second. Send this to somebody. Yeah, the link in WhatsApp I have. The mail I have to figure out which one you send it. No, this might be faster. Once again, I send the mail. I'm trying to send a mail. This one is enough. Does this have the link? Okay. Drama. Really sorry, guys. This is the first time I guess we are doing live come this year. There's a Wi-Fi. AC.
While Raju's figuring that out, maybe if anybody has any question, they can probably ask. Okay, Raju signed off actually.
May I?
Yes, please.
Why isn't there any quantitative quality scoring scheme for software?
That is not really true. We do have quality for the process. We do have quality in terms of number of defects. See, the problem with software is the defect has to be detected. You cannot, kind of intrinsically identify the defect. The defect will have to be there. There are some tools that are available to detect some obvious defects by looking at the code, but then defects will manifest only during runtime. And the way software is today developed, you use a lot of libraries or modules, or in real time you call services, and you don't know whether there are defects in these services. The dependencies are very, very high. It's like saying that, if in a car today, there are parts that are coming from many suppliers, right? And so you need to make sure that all of them are tested and they will all work very well. If you look at a car like Tesla today, which is a software-driven vehicle, they're detecting defects every single day. So that's the reality of software. You may not test every possible input sequence, every possible path within the code, and that's the reason why it's very difficult. It's very difficult to you can run some static analyzers but then you have no way of knowing unless you detect these things during runtime. So there is a question which says that I am an MSc Physics student. What advice would you like to give for students like me when planning to do a startup? Well, physics is one of the best fields to be in. I did MSc Physics. I think what is required to do startup is similar to any other area of specialization. You need to have an idea that you believe will solve a real life problem, a pain point for somebody who's your customer. So you need to know who your customer is. You need to look at a very large addressable market. So the addressable market has to be very large. You need to figure out whether you can fund it yourself or you need external funding. If you need external funding, you need to figure out how to market the idea, how to sell that idea to investors. Investors would of course want to look at returns. So you need to actually create a business plan that shows a viable pathway to profitability and viable pathway to make money on this idea. We always say that you need a co-founder, at least one, because it's a team effort and it's better done with somebody who is sold on that vision, sold on that idea, who passionately believes in the solution that you have created or together you create, and then just do it. Also look at your circumstances, personal circumstances, because doing a startup is a lot of risk, and you should be able to take that risk in the point of life in which you are today. So for example, when you pass out, if you have to take care of your family and they're dependent on you, maybe you need a safe job for the time being, because you need to support your family. So there are certain things that you need to think about, but doing a startup is sort of similar. I believe that physics, engineering, in your studies, etc., if you come up with some solution that can help the world, that's what you need to take forward into a startup. I think Raju is back.
Thanks, Chris. I didn't hear you, but thank you and really apologize here.
We had a couple of questions from the audience while you were away.
That was wonderful.
Excellent.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Chris.
Chris, again, switching Chris and fun, Chris and spirituality. Some play bridge, some play some golf, some party, some pray a lot to get their energy. Where do you get this infinite energy that you have? And how do you get clarity in your thinking?
So first of all, my passion is one, reading. I read a lot. Second, I like playing around with things and doing, action oriented. I like to do things. Third is I like to work with people. It gives me, especially people who are problem solvers, who are constantly thinking about how to help others, how to solve a problem, how to create something new, innovators and people like that. And that's what drives me every day. And everything I do, I try and find. See, previously I was the doer, right? Till I was in Infosys till 2014, my role was operational. And what drove me was to look at the success of the company, to look at servicing our customers and making sure that they derive value from the work that we do. We make sure that our employees are happy and satisfied, etc. That's what drove me. But today, what drives me is to identify people, identify leaders, support them to do their best. And that's the way, I see myself amplifying what I can do today. Support them with mentorship, support them with ideas or opening doors for them using my network, and of course funding their endeavors and things like that. And what drives me is that there are lots and lots of opportunities and lots of things that we can do today to either create new businesses, solve societal problems. So for example, what drove me to research, right? I strongly believe that world-class research can be done from India. Strongly believe. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the people in India, right? These are the same people who cross the Atlantic and do world-class research. So why can't they do it in India? So it must be something to do with maybe the system, maybe the infrastructure that they have, maybe the funding that they have. And my endeavor is to identify, to the extent that I can, these problems and try and solve these things or help solve, maybe in a small place. And then when people see success, they will take it forward. So, I strongly believe that in the future, we need a research park like IIT Madras in every institute across the country, because we need to now holistically think about the impact of an institute. It's just not about producing students or research papers. It's about creating startups and creating products and creating impact directly into the society by these businesses and by these products, right? Which requires you to have a research park and incubator, etc. So that's a model now we have created, and we can scale it up. We can take it to other organizations. World-class research, again, I strongly believe that, we need to create larger groups of people. See, most of the research in India is done by one professor, one or two PhD students. Their funding is 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs. So what will they do? They'll publish a paper. The student passes out, goes on somewhere, maybe to the US. The professor goes to the next PhD student, right? So everybody is happy because their KPIs are all met. But then we have not produced a technology that's going to revolutionize the world. We haven't produced a company that's going to change the world, etc. That requires larger groups, 40, 50 people working on a problem, patient funding for 10 years, right? Larger amounts of money. We can do that. So those are the things that excite me, these ideas. And I may be right or I may not be right, right? I accept that I may not be right. So what you do is you create an hypothesis and you then try and test this hypothesis and find people who will work with you to test this hypothesis and work with them. That's what I'm doing now. Create hypothesis and try and see whether it works.
Great. Thank you. Couple of more questions before I go to rapid fire and close it. You have given enormous time to CII, Shaping India, in so many different RBI forums and other things. Can you talk a little bit about the responsibilities of all of us and the importance of giving time and giving back to the organizations like TIE or CII or the universities that we all graduated from? In this case, maybe IIT, most of us. Can you talk the real benefit not only to the organizations but also to us, and how can we help by giving time, not just the money?
Now, giving time is even more important than money, because money you can make, it will come back, or you spend it, you can make it again. So it's a resource that is recyclable, recirculating. Time is not like that. You lose 1 hour, that's gone. You cannot recover that time again. You spend 1 hour doing something that's 1 hour away from your family, from your friends, from your children, and they miss it, you lose it, and you can't recover. So to me, time is even more precious than money, and anybody volunteering time, etc. I have huge respect for them. Second, giving back to your alma mater is very important because you want more people to benefit from what you have achieved, what you have received from that institute. You want more successes to be created. You want this to become a positive virtuous cycle, and any way you can support time, money, mentoring, adjunct professor, encouraging the professors there, helping in research, anything that you can do, I would really appreciate and would ask people to do. And when it comes to organizations like TIE, CI, etc., it's a way for you to amplify your impact. These are the platforms that you have, and you must leverage. So, as soon as I stepped down from Infosys, I knew I needed platforms, right? Infosys was the platform till then. Now I don't have that platform. So how do I now leverage new platforms? CI was a platform that I leveraged. Working with the government is another platform that I leveraged. Luckily, I got opportunity to, chair certain programs and projects for the government. So I took the advantage of these things, and it's a way for me to amplify what I can contribute, and these are all to make the society better and create new opportunities for others, etc. So it's all doing good only.
Thanks, Chris. I met a couple of entrepreneurs in this room, partners, building companies, and I'm sure in the audience there are several young aspiring entrepreneurs. My question is your advice to young and aspiring entrepreneurs. What would you advise them?
The best is ahead of us. See, India is going to go from $2.7 trillion to $5 trillion to $10 trillion, which means that all the wealth that has been created to date, we're going to double it in the next 5-10 years. That's huge. You can be the engine that drives it. You can make a change in society. Per capita income in the last 25 years have gone from $600 to around $2,000, right? We have seen the changes that happen in our society in front of our eyes in our lifetime, and that's accelerating. And this is what you will be able to influence, impact, and that satisfaction that you get, I think, is tremendous to see more and more people benefiting, and India will become a better society, a better place to live. It's always good to, create a better society, right? And that's what you have the opportunity to do. The next 20 years are going to be even better because of the large amount of disruptive technologies that are going to change everything in society in the next 20 years.
Thank you, Chris. I know that we are running out of time. I'm going to go through a rapid fire. I hope you can give quick, whatever answer comes to your mind. I'll start with, what is your favorite beverage?
My favorite beverage is, club soda and lime. Actually, I don't drink too much, but I like to and maybe tea. I can add tea also.
In which subject were you best in school, at your school?
In school, I was very good in science and maths, actually, very good in science and maths. And I've sustained that throughout that curiosity and things like that.
What advice would you give yourself?
See, I've been lucky, looking back, I feel that things fell in place, and every turn I took, luckily for me, has been the right turn. So, what advice I would give? Only thing I think about today is I started giving back only from 2014. I feel that giving back has to become a habit from a very young age, and it doesn't have to be, a huge sum of money, etc. Maybe, you can buy books for somebody who can't afford to buy books, or you can become a tuition teacher for somebody who you can help with. Something, make that into part of your life, make that into a habit. I thought about doing these things only after I stepped down from Infosys. Till that time, my single-minded focus was Infosys and nothing but Infosys.
Strangest thing you have eaten?
Well, I don't like mushrooms. Anything has mushrooms, I always get surprised sometimes, because I tell vegetarian and they bring mushrooms sometimes. That really, really troubles me. And I don't eat non-veg, so strangest thing has been mushrooms, I would say. Or seaweed, Japan, again, vegetarian, they give you seaweed, right? And you have to develop a taste for these things. And I haven't developed a taste.
One thing people don't know about investing in a business.
Investing is a long-term thing. You cannot invest if you don't understand something. You cannot invest if you think that you will get returns tomorrow. You can do that if you put it in savings bank account. You can take the money back anytime. If you do in fixed deposit, you know exactly what you're going to get. But every investment has its associated risk. Understand that risk and then take a calculated investment decision. If you need the money tomorrow, keep it liquid. If you can keep it for if we can invest it for 6 months, maybe look at fixed deposit. So understand what each instrument, each asset class is all about, the risk associated with that, and then only invest. Don't do this because somebody else is doing something.
Best advice you have received so far?
Well, I've received a lot of advice all through my life. After I, didn't get into MBBS, I was devastated. And I went for tuition because I had not taken maths and physics. Physics I had taken, but I had not taken maths. And I had to learn maths again. So I went for maths tuition. And that's when the teacher told me, this is not the end of the world, right? There is a future waiting for you. You just need to find it. So his advice was work hard, try and do well, and doors will open for you. And it worked for me. Probably one of the best advices. Second is, when Professor Mabla said, there's a Fortran class, right? I jokingly tell students when I talk to them, if the professor stops you in the corridor and tells you to do something, please do, because it may change your life, right? So interesting things like that. And there are many times, things like that have happened.
What is one favorite thing about any of your family member? Just pick one favorite thing.
Well, I have to pick, I was lucky to be married to my wife because she has completely supported me all through these years, right? See, when you have to give 150% to something, and then somebody has to take care of the family. You cannot be worried about something and give 150%. And so I was lucky that, she fully supported me. I used to travel like crazy and things like that, but fully supported and lucky there also.
How many books have you read this year? You said you read a lot.
Yeah, so nowadays, I do read many books in parallel because I read little bit and then switch to something else. I used to look at one subject and read 5-10 books on that subject till about maybe 4-5 years back. But these days, I've changed my reading habits to read in parallel. So right now, I'm reading books on biographies or autobiographies. I'm reading books on history. For example, in a book I'm reading is about the genesis of corporations. Actually, where did this concept of a limited liability corporation come from, right? Things like so. My at a point of time now, probably I read maybe 5-6 books and maybe one fiction. Just to take my mind away from all these things, I pick up a John Grisham book or something like that and read it to completion.
What would you be doing on December 31st, New Year's Eve this year?
I typically spend these times with my family or some friends, and most probably I'll be in Bangalore only.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time. I know that we had some real technical difficulties, but I know what I got out of this. A very, very humble person who has accomplished a lot. And one of my greatest, the books that I read was by Stephen Covey, where he talks about live, love, learn, and leave a legacy. And honestly, you have done all 4 L's already. And I want to thank you for what you do. And I pray Almighty that you are very healthy and you continue to do what you are doing, the passion with which you drive. And if anyone in the audience get excited, I'm sure they will find a way to reach you to see how they can support your vision and vision for not only a few businesses, but for the country as such. Your passion for India and your optimism about India is what we need today. And thank you once again, and my best wishes to your wife and the family. I think you talked about it, for allowing you to give 1 more hour to IIT today. And unfortunately, I don't have too much time for the questions. It's 7:30. So we will wrap up. Yeah, sorry.
No, thank you, Raju. I really enjoyed it. And I strongly believe that IITians are a special chosen few. And, they have contributed a lot, and they can continue to contribute a lot to not just India, to the world. And it's an honor and privilege for me to share some of my thoughts, some of my learnings, and I hope people take it in the right spirit, and they can reach me if there is anything that I can support. Of course, given the constraints that I have. But thank you all very much, and really, really appreciate Raju for this opportunity. Thank you
so much. One last plug for all the people who are in the club today. We have 25-30 people, and those who are still there, please visit the club. It is a fabulous facility, and I really think a lot of hard work has gone by the managing team, and we need everyone's support to come and create the energy. Money will come, but we need this to be used so that we can continue to grow and have it in many other cities. So
I would like, Raju, I would like them to become members. I don't want to, I have no hesitation in asking for it. Please become a member.
Yes.
Chris, sorry to butt in. Thanks one hell of a lot for sparing time. Very inspirational. You owe me a visit to the center. We've been promising for some time. Now that relaxations are in place, I promise you, we have not photoshopped any of the pictures. What you see live will be much better than what we've sent you as pictures. Please do visit us when you're in Chennai next. And thanks once again. And for the audience, it's been a wonderful audience. Let me assure you, you've not missed anything. The whole thing has been recorded, and we will play it for you. We will be sending it with the mailer when we have the next webinar, which is next Saturday. which is by an entrepreneur, an IITian. So you will have the recording along with that mail. Thanks, Raju, for being such a wonderful host. It's been a pleasure meeting him, and God bless. Thanks, Chris. Thanks so much.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.